this episode of Geography Girl. I feel like I always sound like I spoke 50 a day and I don't, I swear. I just have a low voice and I've been out screaming and shouting all weekend, so. But today I wanted to talk to you about the spaceports of Earth and the geography of launch points. A, because I'm a massive geography nerd, and B, because I love space. My dream as a child was to be an astronaut, but I realised I suck at physics and you have to be really, really fit, and I'm not that fit. If you look at the world map of spaceports, you will notice something strange. The great launch pads of human history are scattered across the edge of old empires. There's Baikonur in Kazakhstan, Kourou in French Guinea, and Tanagashima in Japan, the sites of immense technical ambition, all built on landscapes that have been marked by control, exclusion, and colony. The story of space exploration is often told as a universal human dream, a triumph of science and curiosity. The geography of where rockets launched from tell a more complicated story, because to reach space, first humans had to seize the Earth, the latitude of power. The closer a spaceport is to the equator, the more help it gets from the planet itself. At the equator, the Earth's orbit gives the rocket an extra boost of 1,670 kilometers per hour, which is basically giving it a slingshot into the orbit. And that is why when you trace the coordinates of launch pads around the world, they cluster around the invisible belt, the equator, and lower latitudes near it. Physics made these geographies desirable and politics made them possible. Many of these ideal equatorial regions were not in the hands of the spacefaring powers themselves. They were colonial territories, protectorates, or remote regions within federations. And so, as the space age began in the mid-20th century, the old empires found new peripheries. The equator became a new frontier, land of the planet where the global powers of the Cold War would extend their ambitions beyond the Earth's atmosphere. The choice of where to build isn't just about latitude, it's about control. Remote sites mean secrecy, safety, and sovereignty, a place to fail without witnesses. And that's why they take place on the Soviet steppes in South American rainforests, volcanic Japanese island, and the Florida coast. Baikonur, the Soviet frontier. Baikonur is one of those places that barely existed until the world depended on it. In 1955, in the height of the Cold War, the Soviet Union began building its launch complex in the middle of Kazakhstan, 100 kilometers away from any major city. It was originally a missile testing range, chosen for its flat terrain and isolation. Kazakhstan was then part of the USSR. Its land was treated as empty, a blank canvas for Soviet modernity. Villages were cleared, nomads were relocated. A closed city called Leninsk was established to house soldiers and engineers. And it was here on October the 4th, 1957, Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite. And here on April the 12th, 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first into space. The world saw a triumph of socialism and of science. On the ground, Baikonur was also a story of inequality. Local Kazakh workers were excluded from the high-level roles, and much of the steppe that had once been their home was now a restricted zone. In environmental terms, the decades of rocket debris and fuel spills have contaminated the soil and the rivers. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Baikonur suddenly found itself in another country, Kazakhstan, and Russia didn't want to give it up, so they signed a long-term lease, paying around 115 million a year to continue using it until 2050. It remains today a Russian enclave in Kazakh land, a microcosm of post-imperial geography. Sovereignty and dependence are entangled. Baikonur is often described as the cradle of human spaceflight. It's also a relic of an empire. Kourou, Europe's colonial launchpad. If Baikonur was the product of Soviet centralization, Kourou in French Guiana was born of the remains of the West European Empire. Located on the north coast of South America, it is just 5 degrees above the equator. Kourou was chosen in 1964 as the site of France's new Centre Spatial Guinea, or the Guinea Space Centre. It was perfect, technically speaking, close to the equator, facing the open Atlantic, with vast tracts of sparsely populated land. But the land wasn't really empty. It was French Guinea, a region whose history has been exploited by European exploitation. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Kourou was home to plantations worked by enslaved African people. Later, under the French Empire, it became infamous as the site of Devil's Island, the penal colony that imprisoned political dissidents and convicts, including Captain Dreyfus. In the 20th century, France began to lose its overseas empire. French Guinea remained an overseas department, technically part of France, but thousands of kilometres from Paris. When France needed an equatorial launch site, the answer was already under its control, and so European spaceflight is built on colonial foundations. In 1975, Kourou became the primary spaceport for the European Space Agency, launching the Ariane family of rockets that symbolise Europeans' technological renaissance. Later came the Russian Soyuz and the Vega missions, and in 2021, the James Webb Space Telescope was launched from Kourou, the most advanced instrument ever put into space. But for many local residents, the spaceport represents what activists call a second colonialisation. High-tech facilities bring jobs, but mostly to imported expats. The wealth flows outwards, and the environmental risks stay local. In 2017, widespread strikes and protests shut down launches early, and Guyanese workers demanded better pay, healthcare, and recognition from Paris. Kourou is the ultimate paradox, a place where humanity's grandest exploration begins on land marked by exile and inequality. Embodies the double life of an empire, outwardly futuristic but inwardly dependent. Tanagashima, Japan's island of redemption. 1,000 kilometers to the east, the story takes a quieter form. Japan's Tanagashima Space Center is located on the subtropical island of Kyushu and looks almost too beautiful to be launching rockets from. Steep cliffs, blue water, and white sand. Tanagashima became Japan's main spaceport in 1969, a symbolic year for humanity's space ambitions. But Japan's story was different. After World War I, the country became banned from developing ballistic missiles. Its new space program had to be civilian, scientific, and peaceful. And Tanagashima was chosen because it embodied this new identity. It was far from the militarized mainland, surrounded by nature and facing the open sea. Yet the island itself has a deep historical irony. In the 16th century, Tanagashima is where the Portuguese first introduced firearms to Japan. It was the point of contact and transition between Japanese tradition and foreign technology. Centuries later, it would become that space again, the island that launched Japan into the space age. For Japan, the space age was about redemption, not necessarily about their empire. Tanagashima represented a way to look outward, not inward, and to rebuild a nation's identity through innovation rather than conquest. Still, the geography of isolation still persisted. Like Baikonur and Kourou, Tanagashima is the periphery turned into a centre. An island once in the margins, now repurposed as the stage for global ambition. The frontier logic of space. All three of these sites, Baikonur, Kourou, and Tanagashima, share a pattern. They occupy the psychological, physical, and political edges. They are far from the capitals they serve and even further from the people whose land they sit on. And so the geography of spaceports mirrors the geography of an empire. Colonialism turned the peripheries into zones of extraction and experimentation. The space age turned them into zones of projection, launching sites for technological prestige and geopolitical power. And even today, the same logic persists. Cape Canaveral in Florida began as a military missile range. China's Wenchang spaceport sits on Henan Island, which is a symbolic frontier. And India's Sriharikota transformed a fishing village into a national launch complex. And SpaceX's Starbase in Texas follows the same frontier pattern, displacing smaller communities to make room for a cosmic spectacle. Frontier, it seems, never really ended, it just changed. The space age promised to liberate humanity from geography as we know it, but instead it created more of a paradox. Spaceports are the nodes through which nations claim new identities, proving their modernity, asserting their sovereignty, and exerting influence. But the locations they occupy show that even the most advanced technology is built upon old hierarchies of land and labour. Baikonur, Kourou, and Tanagashima are not just gateways to space, they are mirrors reflecting the unequal geographies of Earth. And that's it for today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed this launch into space geography, which is such an interesting topic. If you liked it, give us a like. Subscribe for more because I bring out new episodes every Tuesday. Goodbye!